Greetings, whiskey junkies. Welcome to Whiskey Whistle. I'm your host Mark here for review number 92. Today we're going to be looking again at the Still Waters Distillery and their Stock and Barrel handmade rye whiskey. This one is 100% rye from Ontario, in fact. So the rye is local, and the distillery is local in Toronto, and even the bottling happens there. Let's get that poured, shall we? I'm going to use my very cool, what was the brand name again? Oh dear. Well, it's a very interesting nosing glass. It's sturdy, perfect for outdoors, and great for Canadian whiskey. This is rye, and not to be confused with what Canadians call rye. So from other Canadian distilleries, we often simply call it rye. And it's usually a blended Canadian whiskey. This one is unblended, and it is unchill filtered and has no color added, and it's 46% ABV. And again, 100% Ontario rye is used to make this. So that's very cool. Now, in the previous review, I talked about the distillery. So this time around, we're simply going to smell and taste and swore the whiskey. So hopefully you enjoy that one. Okay, color wise, again, quite light. You can see them side by side, roughly the same color. I'd say that the rye is just a tad more golden, and that the single malt just slightly more lemony in color. And again, some beautiful sunshine there. Hopefully you can pick that up there, the way the light shines through. Nice to be outdoors here. And if you hear an airplane flying above, or a dog barking, or children laughing, or somebody sawing something, well, I'm in the backyard here in Canada where people have all kinds of fun, including me, out here with you. Okay, let's get on to the nose. Before we get onto that one, there will be a short advertisement right here. Okay, welcome back. This is Stock and Barrel Rye Whiskey. Let's give it a smell now, shall we? Get onto the right page. There we are. It's quite spicy. It's also very earthy in nature. There's quite a lot going on there in the nose. Minty, of course, both spearmint as well as peppermint. What else have I written here? Rosemary, fresh ground pepper, pickled ginger if you wait long enough. And it's a little bit milder in the Copita glass. I find it's more robust in this sort of a shape of glass. So, and I've written here dusty rye, kind of like a grain bin. And it's got some strength to it if you really stick your nose in there. So smell it gently at first. Okay. Now, the greatest thing that I find about this whiskey happens to be the palate, the taste. So let's get on to that, shall we? Cheers all. Well, it's got a very honey sweet opening, followed by cinnamon, mint, as well as some cocoa powder. And let's see here. The more you hold it in your mouth, it really does develop some dry and spicy notes as well. Flavor-wise, I get a lot of green apple, and interestingly, in the mouthfeel, there's a touch of fizziness to it, almost an effervescence, which is interesting. And if you ever have actual cinnamon sticks, you know, there's some drinks that call for an actual cinnamon stick to be put in, and afterwards you give it a little bit of a suck or a lick. So it's kind of like licking an old cinnamon stick. Anyway, interesting. And there's a lawnmower. Hopefully the sound of my voice is loud enough to overcome the sound of the lawnmower. The finish, it's fairly short, but it's quite tidy. You get oak spiciness and sweetness. There's a little bit of cinnamon that bows out here, and a bit of wood smoke to leave an impression on your tongue. A bit of cinnamon leaves an impression on your tongue. Let's get on to that with water then. We'll add in a healthy ½ teaspoon, and we will roll and stroll in the glass there. Let's give it a little bit of a shake, just for fun. Okay, well that seems roughly mixed up. Let's check the nose now with a bit of water, and we'll have a short advertisement one more time right there. Okay, welcome back. Onto the nose with water. This is Stalk and Barrel Rye Whiskey. I find with water, at first it falls apart a little bit in the nose. But then given time, the time that I don't have here on camera, it will return to a bit of interesting complexity. I wrote here, it gets somewhat sweeter. You still get the pepper and the ginger. Some vanilla develops, which is interesting. And there's also something somewhat of a dentist office Novocaine note here. And I mean that in a very pleasant way. Not that getting Novocaine is any fun, but I recall the flavor that's left over in your mouth after you get the shot is a little bit numbing, and there's some kind of a smell that's going on there. Anyway, I like it. maybe that's just me. Okay, on to the palate now with water. Much more honey sweetness, a little bit less of spice. I find it gets a bit brighter. More apple, extra vanilla, a little bit of cooked apple in there as well. So I find the palate great. It's great neat. It's also interesting and a little bit different with water. So give that a try. And finish wise, interestingly, it seems a tad longer with water, and I'm left with more of the typical straight rye finish, the straight rye aftertaste from any other rye whiskey. Anything else here? Oh, well, I don't taste that right now. Let's just see. Yeah, not quite. Earlier when I was tasting this from the Copita glass, I found that there was a bit of a horseradish or wasabi finish at the end. A little bit of a kick, and I'm not getting that here, but it is there. Hopefully you will notice that too. Again, I enjoy it. It's nice to have a little bit of a punch, you know, somewhere in the tasting of a whiskey, whether that be in the nose or in the palate or in the finish. But it gives it a bit of oomph, and it would tell you that it would do really well in a cocktail. Okay, so how about the score for Stalk and Barrel Rye Whiskey? This one I'm giving 83 out of 100. And I wrote here that it's a palate-driven rye. So taste is the forefront here. Taste is where this whiskey really excels. Is this the first all-natural Canadian rye? It just might be. It's unchill filtered. There's no added color. Anyway, so interesting. It's a great sipper. It's slightly weak on the nose and the finish, I write. And the nickname for this one is Mr. Natural Rye. It's called Rye because, first of all, it's Canadian whiskey, so it's rye. And secondly, it's 100% rye, so it is rye in fact. Anyway, all right, so that is Stalk and Barrel Rye Whiskey. 83 points out of 100 is the WhiskyWhistle whiskey score for that one. So now what am I going to do? I'm going to take the single malt here from Stalk and Barrel Single Malt and Rye Whiskey, and we're going to mix them in the Copita glass. Okay, so now I have Rye and Single Malt, so Rye Whiskey and Malt Whiskey mixed together, rye and barley. So we're basically only one ingredient short of Canadian whiskey, which would be corn or wheat. Mix that up a little bit. I don't have enough time to let it sit. Let's see. Oh, now this is nice. Caramel coming through. You still got the rye. The rye is really picking up the nose now. Okay, we'll try that again to Mr. Steen and Mr. Bernstein, Barry and Barry from Stillwater's Distillery. Cheers. Thank you for your great work. Hopefully there'll be more to come. Well, I prefer it on the nose and the palate. Not much change in the finish though. I think the finish just needs more time. You know, maybe in a couple or 3 years when they put out a 10-year-old, then there will be some interesting finishes coming from this distillery. Very nice. If you get the tasting pack, which comes with 3 Stalk and Barrel whiskeys, try mixing them and see what you can come up with. I think you'll like it. I really like that. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. This is Mark from WhiskyWhistle, and I can't speak very well today, but I sure can enjoy my whiskey. So take care, and we'll see you for whiskey review number 93. Goodbye all.